The first shot wasn't meant for him. That's what made it unforgettable. Jax Calder was already running when the plasma tore through the air, close enough to singe the hem of his coat. He hadn't planned on being a hero. He hadn't planned on being here at all. But the sound that followed, the sharp, terrified cry of a child that wasn't human, cut through every selfish instinct he had left. The child stood frozen in the open docking ring, small, blue-skinned, her eyes wide with panic. Around her, the station burned. Jax didn't think. He moved. He crossed the open span as weapons fire stitched the metal behind him. The smell of ionized air filled his lungs. He reached the child just as another blast screamed toward them. Jax turned his body sideways and threw himself over her. The shot hit his shoulder plating and detonated. Pain bloomed white-hot. The world went silent for half a second, and then the alarms came back louder than ever. Jax Calder was a licensed long-haul courier. Independent. Forgettable. The kind of human who moved cargo between forgotten systems, so Megacorps didn't have to risk their flagship cruise. He had debts, a barely functional ship called the Driftwake, and exactly zero interest in interstellar politics. None of that mattered now, because when he looked down, the alien child was still alive, trembling, alive. Above them, the attackers realized what he'd done, and they stopped firing. That pause was worse than the shooting. The soldiers wore armor etched with crescent sigils, symbols Jax recognized from old trade warnings. Not pirates, not mercenaries, Imperial Vanguard. Someone important wanted that child dead. Jax scooped her up as the silence stretched. His muscles screamed. His shield generator flickered dangerously low. Every instinct told him to run. So he did. He ducked into a service corridor, boots slamming against metal as emergency lights strobed red. The station AI barked evacuation orders in 6 languages. None of them applied to what he was about to do, because saving her meant making a choice he couldn't undo. The child clutched his chest harness with clawed fingers. She smelled like ozone and something floral. Her eyes met his. Not fear this time. Recognition. That's when Jax understood the worst part. She knew who he was now. Minutes later, the Driftwake tore free from the station just as its outer ring collapsed. Jax didn't look back. He punched coordinates into the Navicore at random and jumped blind into folded space. Only when the stars stretched into lines did he allow himself to breathe. The child curled into the co-pilot seat, exhausted. A faint bioluminescent pattern pulsed along her temples. Jax had seen enough species to know what it meant. Royal lineage marker. Jax laughed once. A dry, broken sound. Of course, he muttered. Hold on, before we get into the real stuff. I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments. Fold Space released them hours later into dead vacuum. No signals. No traffic, just the low hum of an aging human engine and the soft breathing of an alien child who should not exist in his cargo hold. Jax began scanning Galactic nets the moment his system stabilized. What he found made his blood run cold. A statewide alert had already gone out. Species, Aurelian. Status, recovered or neutralized. Authorized force level, total. The Aurelians weren't just another empire. They were ancient. Unified, ruthless when provoked, and fiercely protective of their bloodlines. Jax looked at the child again. He hadn't just interrupted an assassination. He'd stolen a queen's daughter. The Driftwake shuddered as something brushed its sensor range. Jax snapped upright, heart hammering. He brought weapons online, outdated, underpowered, barely legal. Then the comm channel opened. Not a threat, not a demand, a single. Comm transmission echoed through the cockpit. We know what you did, human. Jax's hands froze above the controls, because the voice that spoke next didn't sound angry. It sounded patient. The voice didn't repeat itself. It didn't have to. Jax Calder sat perfectly still as the transmission hung in the cockpit, like a held breath. The Driftwake drifted in open space, engines idling, hull ticking softly as heat bled away. Every survival instinct screamed at him to run. Jump again. Vanish. But the Aurelians had spoken. That meant they already knew where he was. We know what you did, human. The channel stayed open. No encryption. No distortion. Just confidence. Jack slowly raised his hands away from the controls, as if the ship itself might be watching. He swallowed, then spoke. She's a kid, he said. Whatever this is, it doesn't justify. It justifies everything. The voice replied gently. The child stirred at the sound. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dim cockpit. She sat up, antennae like crests along her head rising instinctively. When she heard the voice, her body went rigid. She understood it. Jax felt something tighten in his chest. The Aurelian language was infamous for its layered meaning. One sentence could be a greeting, a threat, and a promise all at once. Humans never quite learned to hear the difference. But the child did. She slid from the co-pilot's seat and pressed herself against Jax's leg, small hands gripping fabric like anchors. Her bioluminescence flickered erratically now, fear bleeding through royal composure. Jax didn't know her name yet. He didn't need to. I'm not handing her over, he said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. If you want her, you'll have to come get her. There was a pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. Of course, the voice said. That was always understood. The channel closed. Jax exhaled hard and immediately slammed power into the engines. The driftweight groaned in protest, ancient coils whining as he spun the ship toward the nearest uncharted corridor. He didn't bother plotting a clean jump. Clean jumps were predictable. Predictable got you killed. Space folded violently around the freighter. Warning lights flared. The NAV core screamed about unsafe vectors. Jax didn't care. The moment they reemerged, his sensors lit up like a war grid. 3 ships. No, 5. Aurelian warcraft slid into formation around him with terrifying elegance. Organic hulls shimmered like living stone. Weapon arrays unfolded silently, as if stretching after sleep. They hadn't chased him. They'd been waiting. Jax's deterrent cannon powered up automatically, then powered back down. The system itself seemed to realize how pointless resistance would be. The child made a soft sound. Not a cry. A tone. The nearest Aurelian ship responded instantly, its weapons dimmed by a fraction. Jax noticed. You can talk to them, he said quietly, more statement than question. The child hesitated, then nodded once. Slowly, carefully, as if each movement mattered. She placed one small hand on the console and vocalized again, this time longer, melodic. The sound vibrated through the ship, harmonics rippling across Jax's bones. The Aurelian ships shifted. Not closer. Lower. A bow. Jax stared. You're not just royal, he whispered. You're what? A successor. The child looked up at him. Her eyes met his. And for the first time, she spoke in trade tongue, voice soft and imperfect. My mother is the voice of dawn. Jax had hauled cargo long enough to know what that title meant. Supreme matriarch. Absolute ruler. Living symbol of an entire species' unity. An empire's heart. The cockpit felt suddenly very small. So, why were they trying to kill you? He asked. The child's bioluminescence dimmed. She looked away. Because, she said carefully, I do not agree with her. That was worse than any threat. Aurelian society didn't fracture. It didn't splinter. It moved as one, guided by consensus enforced through tradition older than humanity's first cities. A dissenting heir wasn't a political problem. It was an existential one. The comm channel reopened. This time, the voice was different. Deeper. Layered. Multiple tones, speaking as one. Human courier Jax Calder, it said. You have interfered in a matter of succession. The consequences will echo across stars you have never seen. Jax squared his shoulders. Then maybe it's time someone echoed back. Silence followed. Then the ships parted. A corridor opened straight through their formation, leading into uncharted space. No weapons fired. No pursuit initiated. A test. Go, the voice said. Run while mercy still has meaning. Jax didn't hesitate. He pushed the engines past redline and sent the driftwake screaming through the gap. As stars blurred again, he felt the weight of what he'd just done settle in his bones. The most powerful empire in known space had just let him go. Not because he was safe, but because the hunt would be more interesting this way. Behind them, unseen but certain, an armada began to move. Jax learned two things in the first 48 hours of running. First, there was nowhere truly uncharted anymore. Second, the Aurelians didn't rush. They didn't need to. The driftwake limped out of fold space, near a dead red dwarf, its radiation storms hammering the hull like cosmic surf. Jax killed all non-essential systems the second they stabilized. Lights dimmed. Heat sinks bled warmth into vacuum. To any casual scan, they were just another piece of drifting scrap. Only then did he let himself breathe. The child sat cross-legged on the deck, watching floating dust motes with unsettling calm. Her bioluminescence had stabilized into a steady, faint glow. Not fear. Focus. Jax finally asked the question that had been gnawing at him. "What's your name?" She looked up, considered him. A ritual in itself. "I am Salith," she said, "daughter of the voice of dawn, keeper designate of the harmonic accord." Jax rubbed his face. "Right, of course you are." Salith tilted her head. "You are displeased." "I'm overwhelmed," Jax said honestly. "You're basically a walking civil war." She nodded, accepting this as factual. "The accord binds my people," Salith continued. "It ensures unity. But unity without choice becomes silence. Silence becomes decay." Those weren't the words of a child. They were the words of someone raised to rule, or to be erased. Jax checked long-range sensors again. Still nothing. That worried him more than immediate pursuit. "You know they're coming," he said. "Yes," Salith replied. "But not yet. My mother will wait until the galaxy is watching." That sent a chill through him. The Aurelians didn't just win wars with weapons. They won them with narratives, with legitimacy, with witnesses. Jax pulled up star charts, searching for anything that wasn't under Aurelian influence. There were few options. Fewer still that would take a human courier, carrying imperial contraband of the living, breathing kind. One place blinked on his display. A loose cluster of independent habitats near the fracture belt. No centralized authority. No standing army. And one thing the Aurelians despised. Unpredictability. "We're going here," Jax said. Salith studied the map. "These people are divided." "Yeah," Jax said. "But divided people argue. They negotiate. They don't just decide." She considered that, then nodded slowly. The driftwake powered up just enough to drift toward the belt. As they approached, Jax picked up chatter. Human, Kesti, even a few old machine dialects. Black markets, refugees, ideologues, and something else. A faint harmonic pulse threaded through the noise. So subtle a human system would miss it. Salith stiffened. "They are calling me," she said. Jax's hands tightened on the controls. "Who is?" "Those who listen," she replied. "Those who feel the accord weakening." Before he could ask more, the cockpit lights flared. An unauthorized transmission forced its way through his dampeners. The image that resolved wasn't Aurelian. It was human. A woman in a patched void jacket stared back at him, scar bisecting one eyebrow, eyes sharp with calculation. "Bold move coming here, courier," she said. "You're dragging a very expensive shadow." Jax didn't bother denying it. "You going to turn me in?" The woman smiled thinly. "Depends. Are you selling?" Salith stepped into frame. The woman's expression changed instantly. Not fear. Reverence. "Oh," she whispered. "So it's true." Jax shot Salith a look. "People know about you." "Not my face," Salith said, "but my signal. My presence alters probability. Those attuned to divergence can sense me." Jax stared. "You're telling me rebels can feel you like a cosmic weather change?" "Yes." The woman on the screen exhaled slowly. "Name's Mara Vance. And if the Aurelians are after that kid, then the fracture belt just became a battleground." Jax leaned back in his chair. "I'm not starting a war." Mara laughed without humor. "Too late. You're the spark." As if to punctuate her words, Jax's sensor screamed. Space rippled. Fold signatures blossomed across the belt, dozens of them. Sleek. Precise. Aurelian. They weren't hiding anymore. Salith's bioluminescence surged bright enough to cast shadows. "My mother has decided," she said quietly. The first Aurelian battleship emerged, blotting out the stars. And across every channel, every language, every frequency, a single message rang out. Return the air. Jax felt the weight of entire civilizations pivot toward him, and he realized something terrifying. The Aurelians weren't here to take Salith back. They were here to make an example of the human who thought one life could matter more than an empire. The fracture belt went silent. Not the normal kind of silence. No, this was worse. Channels stayed open, but no one spoke. Hundreds of ships drifted in place as the Aurelian fleet finished unfolding itself like a perfectly measured threat. Jax had seen war formations before. This wasn't one. This was theater. The largest battleship slid forward, its hull etched with living sigils that pulsed in time with Salith's glow. It wasn't aiming weapons. It didn't need to. Its presence alone bent the behavior of nearby traffic, forcing civilian vessels into neat, fearful orbits. Jax felt small, human, temporary. The comm channel opened again. This time, there was an image. She filled the frame without trying. The voice of Dawn. Salith's mother was vast, not in size, but in presence. Her form shimmered with layered light, like dawn trapped in crystal. Multiple eyes regarded Jax through the screen, ancient and precise. Human courier, she said, her voice resonating through harmonics Jax felt in his spine. You have done a curious thing. Jax swallowed. I stopped a kid from getting shot. A ripple of something amusement passed through her light. You interrupted necessity, the voice replied. My daughter's divergence threatens the accord. Unity must be preserved. Salith stepped forward, her small form suddenly incandescent. Unity without voice is obedience, she said. I will not become a symbol you hollow out. The fleet reacted instantly. Weapon arrays flared to life. The fracture belt erupted into panic motion. Jax slammed the driftwake's shields to full and shoved the ship between Salith and the battleship, a laugh tearing out of him before he could stop it. You hear that? He said. That's not rebellion. That's a kid asking to be heard. The voice of Dawn regarded him in silence. Then she did something no one expected. She addressed the belt. Witness, she said. Every recording system in range lit up. Every neutral observer, every pirate relay, every corporate archive began streaming. This human believes one life outweighs harmony. The voice continued. Let us test that belief. The first shot didn't come from the Aurelians. It came from the belt. A battered mining frigate surged forward, interposing itself between the driftwake and the Aurelian line. Its captain's voice cracked through open comms. You want the kid, the miner said. You go through us. Another ship followed. Then another. Smugglers. Refugee haulers. Old defense craft held together with hope and scrap. Mara Vance's ship slid into position beside Jax. Looks like your weather changed the forecast, she said to Salith. Salith watched, awe flickering across her face. I did not command this, she whispered. Jax grinned despite the terror pounding in his chest. You didn't have to. The Aurelians didn't fire. They waited. Then the voice of Dawn spoke again, softer now. Observe, daughter. Disorder. Emotion. Fragility. Salith raised her chin. Observe, mother. Choice. The stalemate stretched. Seconds felt like hours. Then the Aurelians advanced. Not with annihilation, but precision. Targeted EMP pulses slammed into belt ships, disabling engines, without killing crews. The message was clear. We can end this without blood. Or with it. Jax's systems flickered. Backup power kicked in. He felt the driftwake shudder. Old hull screaming under forces it was never meant to endure. Salith placed a hand on the console. Her glow intensified, harmonics spilling into the void. Something answered. Deep within the belt, ancient infrastructure stirred, forgotten listening posts, dormant relays, experimental gates abandoned by long-dead coalitions. Systems humans barely understood came alive, responding to Salith's frequency. The battlefield changed. Aurelian ships hesitated for the first time. Impossible, murmured an Aurelian commander over an open channel. Jax stared at his displays as the belt itself seemed to rearrange, routes opening where none should exist. You're not just symbolic, he said to Salith. You're key. She nodded, breathless. The accord was built on shared resonance. I can redirect it. The voice of Dawn's image flickered. Stop, she commanded. Salif hesitated. This was the moment everything balanced on. Jax leaned closer, lowering his voice. Whatever you choose, he said. Make it yours. Salif closed her eyes. Then she sang. The sound wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It threaded through metal and vacuum alike, carrying intent instead of force. Aurelian systems began to desynchronize, not break, unlink. The fleet faltered, formations drifting imperfectly for the first time in recorded history. The voice of Dawn stared in shock. You would fracture us, she demanded. Salif opened her eyes. No, she said. I would let us breathe. Silence fell again. Then, from somewhere deep within Aurelian ranks, a ship powered down its weapons. Then another, a ripple of defiance. The Empire wasn't breaking. It was listening. Jax realized his hands were shaking, because the galaxy wasn't watching a war anymore. It was watching a revolution being born, sparked by a human who stepped in front of a single shot. Revolutions don't announce themselves. They hesitate. The Aurelian fleet hung in a broken symmetry. Ships no longer perfectly aligned, no longer moving as one mind. For the first time, silence inside their formation meant disagreement. Jax felt it before he understood it. The pressure in his chest eased slightly, like the galaxy had loosened its grip. Around them, belt ships held position, engines humming nervously, crews waiting for the first real sign of annihilation. No one fired. No one fled. Everyone watched the voice of Dawn. Her image flickered again, stabilizing with visible effort. The light that defined her form dimmed a fraction, not weakness, but strain. You risk everything, she said to Salif. Our unity, our survival. Salif's glow softened, no longer blazing, but steady, centered. No, she replied. I risk certainty. You taught me that survival without growth is stagnation. Jax exhaled slowly. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. The voice turned her gaze to him. And you, she said, why do you persist? Jax shrugged, a human gesture that felt painfully small in this moment, because someone had to stand between the gun and the kid. A murmur rippled through open channels. Translation struggled to keep up. The concept didn't map cleanly to Aurelian philosophy. The voice studied him for a long moment. Humans are anomalous, she said. You bond without lineage. You sacrifice without mandate. You disrupt equilibrium simply by caring. Jax smiled grimly. We've been told. Another Aurelian ship powered down its weapons. Then another. Not all of them. Enough to matter. Mara Vance's voice cut in, low and urgent. Jax, you seeing this? Independent Aurelian captains are breaking formation. Quietly. Salith's eyes widened. They hear me. The voice of Dawn closed several eyes at once, a gesture Jax instinctively read as grief. Once I sang as you do, she said softly, before I learned what chaos costs. Salith stepped forward. And what does silence cost, Mother? That question landed harder than any weapon. The battlefield remained frozen, tension stretched to breaking. Jax's sensors picked up new movement, not from the Aurelians, but beyond them. Corporate fleets. The Megacorps had been watching too. Automated carriers began dropping from fold space at the edges of the system, logos blazing like territorial claims. They didn't care about succession or harmony. They cared about opportunity. Mara swore, if this turns hot, they'll move in. Salvage rights. Resource seizures. The usual. Jax's mind raced. They'll provoke a fight. They always do. The voice of Dawn noticed them as well. Her expression hardened. Predators gather, she said. This is why unity must be enforced. Salith turned to Jax. If violence begins now, everything I've done collapses into justification. Jax nodded. Then we don't let it. He opened a general broadcast channel. Every ship, every faction, every watcher. This is Jax Calder, he said. I'm nobody special, but I'm asking everyone here to hold your fire. The response was chaos. Shouting. Skepticism. Fear. Jax kept talking. If the first shot comes from us, history remembers us as the problem. if it comes from them. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. A corporate destroyer edged forward, weapons charging deliberately, cameras active. A performance for shareholders. The Aurelians tensed. Salith's glow flickered. Jax felt a familiar, terrible clarity settle over him. The kind that comes when you know exactly what it's going to cost. He powered down the driftwake shields. Mara's voice snapped through. Jax, what are you doing? Reminding them who the threat is, he said. He pushed the freighter forward, placing it directly between the corporate destroyer and the Aurelian line. His ship's hull creaked in protest. The destroyer's targeting systems locked on instantly. Unidentified vessel, a cold corporate voice said. Vacate the engagement zone. Jax didn't move. Behind him, Salith placed both hands on the console, harmonics resonating. Not command, but plea. The destroyer fired. Not a kill shot. A warning blast. It tore through the driftwake's forward plating, sending the ship spinning. Alarm screamed. Gravity failed. Jax slammed into his harness as sparks rained down. The belt erupted in outrage. The Aurelians reacted as one, defensively. Weapons flared, not toward Salith's supporters, but toward the corporate fleet. The voice of Dawn's eyes widened in horror. You have shown them the predator, she breathed. Jax dragged himself upright, blood in his mouth, systems failing all around him. Sometimes, he said hoarsely. That's all it takes. Across the system, neutral observers began labeling the event in real time. Not rebellion, not coup, intervention. The corporations pulled back, suddenly cautious. The Aurelians held fire. Salith looked at Jax, something like tears glowing in her eyes. You are injured, she said. Jax laughed weakly. Yeah, but still standing. And in that moment, the galaxy learned something dangerous. That an empire could hesitate, and a single human ship, broken and burning, could make it do so. The driftwake should not have been functional. Half its forward hull was gone. 2 decks were vented to vacuum. The main reactor sat one overload away from becoming a star of its own. And yet, against every rational metric, it held together. Stubbornness had always been its defining feature. Jax floated in partial gravity. Magboot struggling to find purchase as emergency bulkheads slammed into place around him. Red lights pulsed like a dying heartbeat. The air smelled of burnt circuits and old metal. Salith knelt beside him, her glow subdued but steady, hands hovering uncertainly over his torn sleeve. You are bleeding, she said. Human thing. Jax replied, wincing as he pushed himself upright. We leak. A lot. She made a small, distressed sound. Around them, the battlefield had shifted into something fragile and unprecedented. Aurelian ships maintained defensive posture, not advancing, not retreating. Corporate fleets held at distance, weapons cooling. Legal teams, no doubt, already rewriting narratives. No one wanted to be the one who broke this moment. The comm channel opened again. The voice of Dawn appeared, but she was no longer alone. Other Aurelian figures flanked her image. Commanders, philosophers, keepers of tradition. They were not speaking in unison. They were arguing. Jax had never seen an empire do that in public. You have forced discourse, the voice said to Jax. Not accusation. Observation. Wasn't my plan, Jax answered. Just seemed wrong to let the loudest guns decide. Salith rose to her feet, steady despite the chaos around them. Mother, she said. This is what the Accord was meant to prevent. Rule by inevitability. The figures behind the voice shifted, some dimming, others brightening. The Accord ensures survival, one intoned. And survival without choice ensures nothing, Salith replied. Silence followed. Not the brittle kind. The listening kind. Mara Vance's voice cut through on a private channel. Jax, belt captains are forming a perimeter around you. Voluntary. You've become symbolic. Jax snorted. That's never good. It is if they're protecting you. External sensors confirmed it. Scrap-built ships positioning themselves between the driftwake and any potential aggressor. No coordination. No command. Just decision. The voice of Dawn closed her eyes again. For the first time in 10 cycles, she said softly. The Accord is being interpreted, not obeyed. She opened her eyes and looked at Salith. You have changed the resonance. Salith bowed her head. I learned it from watching a human stand still when he should have fled. The voice turned her gaze back to Jax. You are injured. Your vessel is compromised. Yet you remain. Jax shrugged carefully. I've hauled worse cargo. A faint shimmer passed through the Aurelian delegation. Amusement, perhaps. Then something unexpected happened. An Aurelian ship broke fully from formation and powered toward the driftwake. Weapons offline. Shields lowered. Jax's heart skipped. That normal? Salith's eyes widened. No. The ship hailed them. The figure that appeared was young by Aurelian standards. They're light and steady, but bright. I am Speaker Terrell, they said. Third harmonic order. I request asylum. The system exploded with noise. Aurelian commanders shouted. Belt ships scrambled. Corporate fleets shifted nervously. The voice of Dawn stared, stunned. You would abandon unity, she demanded. Terrell met her gaze. I would redefine it. Salith's glow flared, not in power, but in relief. Jax let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Guess it's contagious. More signals followed. Not defections yet, but questions, requests, conversations starting where silence once ruled. The voice of Dawn regarded the chaos she had spent centuries preventing. This is the cost, she said quietly. Salith stepped closer to the console, voice firm but gentle. And this is the future. For a long moment, it seemed the voice might order annihilation, wipe the slate clean, erase uncertainty with force. Instead, she did something no Aurelian ruler had ever done. She yielded the channel. This human, the voice announced across all frequencies, acted without mandate, without authority, and without understanding our consequences. Jax winced. Fair. And yet, she continued. He revealed a fracture already present. Her gaze softened, just a little. The Accord will convene. Publicly. Gasps echoed across space. Until then, the voice concluded, no harm will come to my daughter, or to the human who shielded her. The transmission ended. The battlefield didn't erupt. It exhaled. Salith turned to Jax, eyes shining. You are safe. Jax slumped against the console, finally allowing himself to feel the pain. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Outside, ships slowly powered down weapons. Rescue craft moved in. The belt began to breathe again. But Jax knew better than to believe this was over. Empires didn't change in a day. They changed when someone proved they could. And somewhere deep within Aurelian space, ancient systems were recalibrating around a truth they could no longer ignore. That a human courier with a broken ship and a bleeding arm had made the galaxy pause. The galaxy didn't return to normal. It recalibrated around the anomaly. Emergency repair drones swarmed the driftwake, welding plates, sealing breaches, pumping atmosphere back into spaces that had forgotten what air felt like. Belt medics insisted on treating Jax despite his protests. One of them taped his shoulder and muttered something about idiot heroes with professional affection. Jax lay strapped to a gurney in his own cargo bay, staring at the ceiling he'd patched a dozen times over the years. It had never felt smaller. Across from him, Salith sat quietly, legs folded, glow dimmed to a calm, contemplative hue. She was listening to something he couldn't hear, layers of distant conversation rippling through space. They're arguing still, she said softly, but now they are arguing about what comes next. Jax smiled faintly. That's progress. News feeds flooded the system. Human networks, corporate channels, fringe philosophers. Everyone wanted a label. Some called it the Belt Incident. Others called it the human pause. A few, more dramatically, called it the day the Accord hesitated. Jax didn't care what they called it. He cared about the quiet dread settling into his bones. Marv Ance leaned against a cargo crate nearby, arms crossed, eyes scanning readouts. You're trending, she said, which is never good for someone who wants to stay alive. Can I opt out? Jax asked. She snorted. You already did. That's the problem. Salith looked up. Attention is dangerous, she said, but also protective. Eyes create accountability. Tell that to anyone who's ever been famous. Jax muttered. The Driftwake's comm system chimed. Priority channel. Encrypted beyond anything the belt should have been able to generate. Salith stiffened. This is my mother, she said. The image resolved, this time without ceremony, without spectacle. The voice of Dawn appeared alone, her light subdued, edges less defined. This channel is not recorded, she said. Jax shifted upright, despite the medic's protests. Appreciate the privacy. The voice inclined her head slightly, a gesture that would have been unthinkable days ago. The Accord convenes in 7 cycles, she said. Until then, you and my daughter will remain under Imperial protection. House arrest. Jax asked. Observation, the voice corrected. For both of you. Salith met her gaze. And if I refuse? The voice paused. That, she admitted, is now an option. Silence followed. Heavy. Honest. You have altered the harmonic baseline of my people. The voice said to Jax. Not through force, but through example. This is unsettling. Jax shrugged carefully. I didn't mean to. I believe you, she replied, which makes it worse. Before Jax could respond, another signal cut in, or really an encryption, but unfamiliar routing. Speaker Terrell appeared, the light sharper now, more defined. Voice of Dawn, Terrell said. The independent speakers request audience. The voice closed several eyes, then nodded. Granted. The channel split, filling with faces Jax didn't recognize. Dozens of Aurelians, scholars, captains, archivists, none speaking in unison. The Accord was fracturing into conversation. Jax leaned back, overwhelmed. You seeing this? Mara whistled. You broke an empire without firing a shot. I stood still. Jax said quietly. That's it. Salith looked at him with something like reverence. In a universe that moves by momentum, stillness is an act of will. Days passed. Repairs completed. Tensions cooled. Corporate fleets withdrew, issuing carefully worded statements about misinterpretations of force posture. The belt resumed its chaotic life, but Jax and Salith didn't leave. They couldn't. Every jump lane near the system was now watched, not by hostile forces, but by witnesses. Everyone wanted to see what the human and the air would do next. That was when the threats began. Anonymous messages, encrypted pings, bounties posted quietly, then rescinded just as quietly. Someone, somewhere, wanted Jax removed from the equation. Mara found one and showed it to him. That's not corporate, she said. That's internal. Jax frowned. Aurelian. She nodded. Hardliners. If they can't silence the idea, they'll try to silence you. Salith's glow dimmed dangerously. Then they misunderstand. Jax looked at her. About what? About you, she said. And about me. That night, if time could be called that an open space, Salith approached Jax as he sat alone in the cockpit. I have been thinking, she said, about why you did not flee. Jax didn't look up. Fleeing felt wrong. She nodded. That is not an answer. It is a value. She placed a small, warm hand over his. My people follow harmony. Yours follows choice. I believe the future requires both. Jax finally met her gaze. And what happens to the guy who accidentally introduces that idea? Salith smiled, truly smiled for the first time. He becomes very difficult to erase. The ship's sensors pinged. Unscheduled arrival. Not Aurelian. Not corporate. Human military signature. Mara's voice snapped through the channel. Jax, you might want to see this. A formation of human warships dropped out of fold space, insignia gleaming. They weren't here to rescue him. They were here to claim him. The human fleet arrived in perfect formation. That alone made Jax uneasy. 6 warships, clean hulls, fresh paint. Transponders broadcasting lawful authority and righteous intent. The kind of fleet meant to be seen. Meant to reassure citizens that someone, somewhere, was still in control. Mara leaned over Jax's shoulder, eyes narrowing. That's not rescue, she said. That's acquisition. Salith watched the ships with a tilted head, studying them the way one might study a new species. They move with certainty, she observed, as if doubt has been engineered out. That's one way to put it, Jax muttered. The lead ship hailed them. Crisp signal. No interference. Independent courier Jax Calder. A firm voice said. This is Admiral Rhea Kincaid of the United Human Systems Defense Council. Power down your vessel and prepare for transfer. Jax closed his eyes briefly. Of course it is. He opened the channel. On what charge? None, Kincaid replied. You are being classified as a strategic individual. For your protection, and for humanity's interests. Mara barked a laugh. There it is. Salith turned to Jax. They wish to claim you as a symbol. Or a tool. Jax said. Admiral Kincaid continued. Your actions have altered diplomatic trajectories. You will be escorted to a secure facility while appropriate narratives are established. Narratives, Jax repeated. You mean spin. We mean stability, Kincaid said. Behind the human fleet, Aurelian observers held position. Silent. Watching. Salith stepped forward, her presence subtly shifting the hum of the ship. He is not yours to categorize. Kincaid's eyes flicked to Salith for the first time. The pause was brief, but telling. The Aurelian heir, she said. With respect, this is a human matter. Salith's glow intensified. There are no isolated matters anymore. Jax leaned into the mic. Admiral, I'm not going anywhere unless I choose to. The human ships powered weapons, not fully, but enough to send a message. Mara's voice dropped. Jax, they'll force it. Legally. Legality doesn't equal right. Jax replied. Speaker Terrell's voice suddenly cut into the open channel, Aurelian encryption overriding human protocols, with unsettling ease. Admiral Kincaid. Terrell said calmly. Any attempt to detain this human will be interpreted as coercion of a neutral mediator. Kincaid stiffened. You don't get to define human law. No, Terrell agreed. But we do define consequences. The standoff deepened. Jax felt the familiar pressure building again, that sense of being the smallest object in the room and somehow the pivot point of everything. He made a decision. Admiral, he said, if I come with you, what happens to Salith? A beat. She will be returned to her people, Kincaid said. Under supervision. Salith's eyes darkened. Confinement. Kincaid didn't deny it. Jax nodded slowly. Then no. Mara swore under her breath. You're choosing an alien empire over your own species. Jax shook his head. I'm choosing a kid over a committee. Salith stepped closer, voice low. This is the moment where your people decide what they value. The Aurelian ships shifted, not aggressively, but perceptibly. A reminder. Admiral Kincaid exhaled sharply. You're forcing my hand. Jax smiled sadly. Seems to be a theme. Before Kincaid could respond, another signal forced its way into the network. Older encryption. Civilian registry. A chorus of human voices followed. Independent captains. Aid organizations. Fringe diplomats. Millions watching through pirated streams. This human acted without orders, one voice said. That's the point. You don't get to lock him away because he embarrassed you. Another added. Public sentiment surged in real time. Kincaid's tactical displays must have been lighting up. This situation is escalating beyond control, she said tightly. Salith raised her hand slightly, not in surrender, but in offering. Her harmonic resonance spilled outward, touching both fleets. Listen, she said, all of you. This conflict is not about ownership. It is about precedent. The noise faded. Even the human fleet seemed to hesitate. Kincaid's shoulders slumped a fraction. You have no idea how dangerous this is, she said to Jax. Jax met her gaze. I do. That's why I'm not moving. A long silence followed. Then, slowly, deliberately, the human warships powered down their weapons. Not retreat. Stand by. Kincaid nodded once. Temporary autonomy granted. Don't make me regret this. The channel closed. Mara let out a shaky laugh. You just told your own military to wait. Jax slumped back into his chair. I really need a vacation. Salith looked out at the gathered fleets, awe and resolve mingling in her glow. The galaxy is learning, she said. Not quickly, not easily, but it is learning. Jax watched the stars drift beyond the viewport. He had saved one child. Now, every power in the galaxy was waiting to see what that choice would cost them next. Waiting became the most dangerous thing of all. The fleets held their positions, but tension didn't fade, it condensed. Every ship, every observer, every government knew the same truth. Whatever happened next would become policy. Jax spent most of the time in the cockpit, hands resting on dead controls, staring at a galaxy that now felt uncomfortably attentive. The drift wake was stable again, but it no longer felt like freedom. It felt like a stage. Salith sat across from him, quieter than before. Her glow dimmed and brightened in slow, thoughtful cycles. "My people are afraid," she said finally. "Of you?" Jax asked. "Of choice," she replied. "It introduces outcomes that cannot be predicted." Jax nodded. "Yeah, that tracks." Mara entered with a datapad, face grim. "We've got movement. Inside Aurelian space." Salith straightened. The Accord convenes early. The comm channel opened without ceremony. The voice of dawn appeared, this time surrounded by a full circle of Aurelian delegates. Not aligned, not synchronized, distinct. "We are assembled," the voice announced, "and we are divided." That admission alone would have shattered entire civilizations. "The question before us," the voice continued, "is whether the Accord exists to preserve unity, or to serve the beings within it." Eyes, dozens of them, turned toward Salith. "You have forced this reckoning," the voice said to her. "Speak." Salith inhaled slowly. When she spoke, her voice carried, not through volume, but clarity. "I do not reject the Accord," she said. "I reject its silence. Harmony that cannot tolerate dissent is not harmony. It is fear wearing tradition." Murmurs rippled through the delegates. She continued, "The human did not command me. He did not persuade me. He acted according to a value his species considers foundational, that no authority justifies the death of a child." Jax shifted uncomfortably. "If that value threatens us," Salith said, "then perhaps the threat is not the value." The voice of dawn closed her eyes. "Once," she said softly, "I made a similar argument. It cost millions of lives." Salith did not flinch. "And what did silence cost after?" That question echoed. Speaker Terrell stepped forward. "The Accord has not been tested against growth in 10 cycles," they said. "We assumed stasis was stability." Another delegate spoke. "The human presence destabilizes us." "And yet," Terrell countered, "we are still here." The debate intensified. Philosophical, ethical, raw, outside, human and corporate observers watched history unfold live. Mara whispered, "This is bigger than any of us." Jax nodded. "That's what scares me." At last, the voice of dawn raised a hand. "The Accord will be amended," she declared. Shockwaves rippled through every channel. "A provision shall be introduced," she continued, "allowing divergence within defined thresholds. Dissent will be acknowledged, not eradicated." Salith's glow flared bright, then steadied. "The role of air," the voice added, "will no longer be singular." Jax blinked. "Wait, what?" Salith turned to him, eyes wide. "There will be no single voice of dawn," the matriarch said. "Power will be shared, interpretation distributed." The Empire was decentralizing, on purpose. "This decision," the voice said, "requires a symbol." Jax felt his stomach drop. "No," he said softly. "No, no, no." The voice's gaze met his. "Human Jax Calder," she said. "You will serve as an external witness to the Accord's evolution." Mara's jaw dropped. "They're making you a—" "Don't say it." Jax snapped. "Linchpin," she finished anyway. Jax rubbed his face. "I didn't sign up for this." "You never do," the voice replied. "That is why it works." Salith stepped beside him. "You would not be bound," she said quickly. "Only present, only remembered." Jax looked at her, at the galaxy watching. "Temporary," he said. "I'm not becoming a permanent anything." The voice inclined her head. "Agreed." The human fleet stirred. Admiral Kincaid's face appeared again, carefully neutral. "Human leadership will need assurances." You will have them, the voice said, and accountability. The Accord session concluded. The channel closed. Silence returned, but it was different now. Hopeful. Terrifying. Mara let out a long breath. Congratulations. You're officially part of Interstellar Reform. Jax slumped back into his chair. I just wanted to deliver medical crates. Salith smiled gently. And instead, you delivered possibility. Outside the viewport, fleets began to withdraw. Lines redrawn. Futures rewritten. But Jax knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end. Because symbols don't get to retire quietly. And somewhere already, someone was deciding how to undo everything he'd helped begin. History didn't close around Jax Calder. It left him open. Weeks passed. The fleets dispersed. The fracture belt returned to its beautiful, lawless noise. News cycles moved on, as they always did, though never quite far enough. Jax remained where he'd started, aboard an aging freighter held together by welds, luck, and a reputation he never wanted. The driftweight drifted at the edge of civilized space, its registry quietly updated. Status, protected neutral. Jax stared at the designation like it might bite him. Salith stood beside him at the viewport, her glow soft, no longer flaring with constant tension. She had changed too. Not less powerful, more grounded. The Accord is fragmenting into councils, she said. Slowly, painfully, but it holds. Jax nodded. Good, because if it didn't, they'd blame the human again. She smiled faintly. They already do. Just not with anger. Speaker Terrell's voice chimed in over the comms. The first Descent Enclave is formed. They reported. Voluntary. Non-violent. It will not last without resistance. When does anything? Jax replied. The channel closed. Jax exhaled and leaned back in his chair. The galaxy had shifted, but it hadn't become kinder. Just more honest. Mara Vance's ship passed by, engines flaring. She hailed him one last time. Word of advice, she said. Stay unpredictable. It's the only armor that still works. Jax chuckled. Coming from you, that's terrifying. Good, she replied. Means you're paying attention. Her signal cut. Jax turned to Salith. So what happens to you now? She was quiet for a moment. I will not rule, she said. I will listen. I will travel. The Accord needs voices that remember what it felt like to be small. Jax looked at her. You're not small. She smiled. Neither are you. A new signal appeared, this one human, civilian grade. A relief convoy requesting escort through unstable space. Jax's fingers hovered over the controls. Old instincts stirred. This is where I bow out of history, he said. Go back to hauling things that matter. Salith placed a hand on the console. You always were. He powered up the engines. The driftwake responded with a familiar, stubborn hum. As the ship turned toward open stars, Jax caught sight of something on the long-range display. Aurelian vessels, not warships, but diplomats, traveling alongside independent human escorts. Not aligned, accompanied. The galaxy hadn't become united. It had learned to walk beside itself. Jax smiled, small and tired and real. He had not changed everything. He had changed one moment. And sometimes that was enough. Before we end, if you felt even a spark of that moment, do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone who loves HFY Sci-Fi Tales, and subscribe to HFY Soundscape for more stories where humanity stands small and refuses to step aside. The driftweight jumped to fold space, stars stretching into light. Somewhere behind him, an empire learned to argue. Somewhere ahead, a child learned to choose. And somewhere in between, a human courier kept flying. Not as a hero, not as a symbol, but as proof that sometimes, standing still is the bravest move in the universe.